Welcome, everyone, to Garden of Thought, proudly presented by the Sports Jedi Network and on YouTube, the Sports Jedi Media Network, until further notice. Very ominous because this episode is covering Stephen King's maybe his set of masterpieces. I don't know if it's his seminal work or not. You could argue about The Shining and The Stand, but The Dark Tower um, might have the most staying power, perhaps. I don't know. Interesting discussion in and of itself, but not today because today we're talking about The Dark Tower, not a compare and contrast. However, with Stephen King, there's always some compare and contrast because a lot of his books, maybe all of them, are related, or at some point they became related or became related, whether by hook or by crook. Anyway, I read The Dark Tower, 7-book series, probably finished them about 15 years ago. So my memory on them is not great. Thus, I brought in an expert on the subject. He's been on the show once before on the Caprica show with his lovely fiance. I can't wait to give her away at the wedding. No, she probably is something more important than me giving away, but I'm an understudy. It's Matthew Vincent. How are you, Matthew?
I'm doing okay. Glad to be here. Thank you.
And the Vincent is why you're seeing all the Vincent van Gogh stuff there. I don't even know if that's his favorite artist or not.
There's a dark tower on it.
It's dark. Well, sure, why not? Starry Night, and then the Dark Tower. It all very much fits together. In fact, I believe there were sequences in the movie where pieces of not the movie, the book series. There was a movie, The Dark Tower, with Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey. My friend Mark Hammer was a producer on it. He was on episode 35 of what was then the Garden of Doom, and he told everyone, "Don't see that movie; it's terrible." I agree. Don't see that movie; it's terrible. It is not a representation of Stephen King's The Dark Tower by any way, shape, or form. Matt, give us a little bit about yourself, and then your Stephen King aficionado ship, and then we can move into The Dark Tower directly.
Yeah. I've been quietly working on my resume to become an employee of the TED Corporation. The Dark Tower series first got brought to me. Like my parents, or my mother at least, was a big Stephen King fan, so we always had the books around. So when I started getting into books and reading, they were right there on the shelf to start pulling out. So I think I started with like the Tommy Knockers, and just kind of like grew from there. The first introduction that I got into the Dark Tower world was The Gunslinger. A friend of mine came to visit, I think in 1991, with the audiobooks on tape, if we're dating all the way back. And so we listened to those, and I was hooked. Part of that was the story. The other part was, I think, the delivery. Frank Muller, I think, is one of my favorite audiobook readers. He did a fantastic job bringing Roland and his world to life. The problem with starting this series in 1991 was that was when Wastelands was published. So I was able to get through the first 3 books just in time to hit the cliffhanger ending. And then I had to wait forever for the 4th book to finally get written, finished, published, and brought out. So I had a long span in between the cliffhanger ending on the end of the 3rd book and finally getting back into the series probably about a decade later. So there was a few more books to dive into. But as you stated, the Stand, The Shining, multiple other books that he's got, they all find a connected place, a connected tissue to this central piece that is the Dark Tower. So it's one of the things that I think is the biggest contribution to just literary works in general is Stephen King, not just connecting his own universe, which is heavy in his own creations, but also turning almost every story ever written into something that could potentially be true. Yes. Because of the doorways that he has created between our world and all of these other, imaginary, fictitious. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. They also go to other areas in well, in the United States, in Earth, but different versions of Earth, where you come across the same figures, but they're not the same characters necessarily. Which, I mean, hello Iron Man, hello Doctor Doom,
Yeah.
kind of thing. Stephen King also. Okay, I'm gonna, for those who didn't read it, I'm gonna spoil one thing, and that is, in some point, he pulled the Clive Cussler and cast himself in the book without us really realizing he cast himself in the book the entire time. And that's all I'm going to say about it. But Mr. King, while you're a prolific writer and extremely creative, and maybe one of the most important authors, at least of fiction and horror and terror ever, you're not Clint Eastwood. And the Gunslinger is definitely more Clint Eastwood. Anyway, that at least Josh Brolin, so that aside. So I remember picking up the Gunslinger and going, this can't possibly be the first book in a series, because it drops you down into the middle of a world, which is not unique for a book in any way, but you're spending so much time just trying to figure out where you are. Are you on Earth at all? What time? It's like a world like our own, but not exactly with our own, with mythologies and histories like our own, but not very much like our own. And it's the Gunslinger starts off sort of like a Western, or very much like a Western, but it's almost like Sword of Shannara. It's like in the future, a dystopian future, something very bad happened, and society regressed in certain ways, including technology. But I don't know. I'm going to let you take it from there. But it starts with a line something like, the Gunslinger squinted his eyes and he could see the man in black, miles in the distance. So something like that. And
that's very close.
Yeah.
I believe the opening phrase was, the man in black fled across the desert and the Gunslinger followed.
Yeah, that's
right. One of the coolest opening lines. And you're right. You start off in a Western, right? You're in the middle of a desert. You've got some kind of religion they hint into, that he's like in the middle level of trying to achieve. If he was a master of this thing, he wouldn't even need to drink water. He would be a master of his body and things like that. And you go through this desert, and by the time, and one of the things about the Gunslinger that you don't realize until you're finally like kind of almost all the way through it, it's kind of like telling a story in reverse. Because you start off, like you said, you dive right in and you're walking across the desert. He hits a hut with an old man, and then he has to tell him a story. And that story was what happened to him before he got there, which was going backwards in time. And then, finally gets to move forward a little bit from that story. And it keeps bouncing around in little ways that goes back and back and back and back to get you some of that reverse order fill in of what's going on. But I remember one of the first hooks that got me into it was that made me realize this is not just a Western. He's in the middle of telling this story, and he's in this Western town with very, very Western scenario things going on. And then all of a sudden he goes into a bar, and somebody in there is playing ragtime version of Hey Jude.
Right.
And you're like, well, wait, hold on. And, you bat it off at first of, okay, maybe this is just something that, Stephen King's doing. It's a little weird. He throws Hey Jude in the middle, but it sticks in there like a thorn. And then later on you go through and you get to a scene where he's got a drink from a water pump, or one of his other characters coming in there, Jake, gets him water from a water pump that is atomically battery driven powered, like some super futuristic machine that is in this desolate old Western environment. And you're like, how do these play in the same story? Not to understand later on, it's humongous.
Yes, and it was a little bit weird, but yeah, I mean, but it's almost like the Gunslinger is portrayed not quite as a gun. It's you went from samurai to Jedi pretty quickly, and which is, I mean, not that big of a leap except for the magic part of it,
Sure.
or the special abilities part. But it's right now we're, when we're recording this, obviously people watching live or soon will, know that, but it's August 2nd, 2026. I mean, because this show will exist in forms forever. And Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey, came out 2 weeks ago, whatever. And that's very much, Odysseus' story in the Odyssey is he's telling the story, from, retroactively, which is different than the Iliad. And he's talking to Calypso, who, isn't an old man, but, she's a goddess, or half goddess, whatever. And of course, Odysseus is a Greek hero, which makes him at least part god as well. He's a demigod. And, he's telling his story and his version and his recollection of it. And, there's a little magic there too, but I mean, sort of the Odyssey, the Iliad and the Odyssey in one respect is like the Odyssey is the handoff from when gods and monsters walk the earth to where, this is the last generation. It's sort of when, at the end of Tolkien, when, the elves and everyone sails off and leaves,
right.
Middle Earth to the men. We are still very much, this isn't like that, but there's still gods and monsters we think, and magic and something we think. But something
I think it's very much like that, because it's kind of like trying to prevent that next step from having to happen. They don't want the world to move on, but it is moving on, right? It's whether they like it or not.
And and I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember something in the saloon went terribly wrong. And before you know it, the gunslinger, who's there for basically oasis, for sanctuary, for hospitality, just a break, just some water, just a respite. He knows that he can catch the man in black, if in fact he's ever really supposed to catch the man in black, or if that's just his eternal quest. We don't know yet. Nor am I sure that we ever really, know. But he ends up having to kill them all. Like, he's got to slaughter the entire town, which is not a very highly populated town, which is another indicia of dystopia. But you've read and listened to the books way more recently than I have. So maybe take us through that.
So as he's telling the story about the town that he had to go through before he finds this man in the desert that's finally going to try to help him with a meal, right? Because, meals and drinks of water are few and far between traveling across the vast desert. So in this town, he meets a woman called Allie. Now, let's take one quick step back, though. We got to talk about which gunslinger book are we talking about? Excuse me, because there are technically two. There's the original version that started in 1970. He wrote like a chapter piece for a magazine contribution. He just wanted to, publish essentially a short story. People really loved it. He just thought he was going to try to make some money off of a weird idea. That was kind of too big for him, so he did a small version of it, which was the opening of the Gunslinger. That did very well, so he put out another version. I believe was the Way Station. So in like an additional chapter, put that out. People just were like, where's the rest? Where's the rest? Where's the rest? So by, I believe it was 1982, he finally wrote the very first, The Gunslinger, Dark Tower 1. Now, after he got through, I think, 4 or 5 books, he had his accident in 2003. And then because the story was not laid out in his mind as here's what I want to do, now I'm going to go do it. It was more, let me write this, see where it takes me. And it kept going. So he didn't even know where this was going to head out, Stephen King, as he was writing throughout these stories. So by the time he gets to 2003 and he's got a large number of this universe has been kind of spewed out from his mind finally, he goes back and looks back at the original Gunslinger and realizes that there are either some continuity issues with what he's tried to do or what has now become this bigger story. And he really wanted to fix them because he got into this accident in 2003 also where he got hit by a van. Now he was laid up in the hospital, didn't know how well as he was going to survive this. And he felt kind of pushed to, fix a couple things before he's potentially not able to fix them. So he goes back and does a remake, rewrite of the Gunslinger, adds like 9,000 words, changes a couple things in the story that he didn't like from the first one. The one problem, I don't have a problem with somebody trying to add to their works, right? It's kind of like a painting. It's really never done if you just want to add some more stuff. But the the dialect of some of the characters that he created later on, and I believe the fifth book, Wolves of the Kala, he started pushing a lot of that into the first one, added a bunch of foreshadowing things in there. Essentially, to me, I see that remake book as book 8. If you're going to put them in a series in line, I think you need both. You need the original Gunslinger at the start to begin this journey with, and I would recommend reading the rewrite, but I would wait until after the 8th book, right? Until after the 7th book, the Dark Tower itself, to then go back and read the rewrite. Because there's, I think, too many Easter eggy things that are put into that rewrite that lose their punch when you finally get to what those are talking about in the actual story and the storyline. So if we're talking about the original, the 1970 right that was published in 1982, he goes into this town and he meets a woman there, is just somebody's talking to, she's like the bartender or whatever, starts asking her about what's beyond the desert. Because beyond the desert, he has no idea what's out there. He's just trying to get a little feel. He knows he has to go into it. It's where the Man in Black went. The Man in Black came through this town. So he's just trying to gather some information about it. But in the meantime, he realizes that this town and potentially Allie herself kind of feels like a trap.
Right.
He doesn't know if the Man in Black did this on purpose or if this was just, part of Ka, which is the bigger force of kind of like karma. Ka is what things are meant to be, right? People survive things for a reason. They go on for a reason. They go through heartache and challenge and disruption for a reason. And now you're into this next, piece of things.
Yeah, there's the wheel of Ka, and
that's it.
It's easy to call it like akin to the Force, but it really isn't exactly that. It's just more like fate, almost more in like a Viking or Greek mythology sense than in a Star. I think the Star Wars thing ends with the gunslinger being sort of more than just a gunslinger and closer to a Jedi than just a samurai fighter. But I think that part sort of ends. I mean, he's got some tricks and nifty stuff, but it's all within this world. It's not supernatural. Somebody asked, why is he pursuing the Man in Black? And I think without getting into too much, the Man in Black simply is his nemesis. The Man in Black is the person who he's got to find to make things right, to get to the Man in Black works. So the Man in Black, I mean, if you believe that the Lucifer is the son of the devil, which I just made up, the Man in Black is Lucifer to him and the devil is somewhere else. Or to go back to Star Wars, which is a very imperfect, Darth Vader to Palpatine, maybe.
Sure. The catch, though, is that in the Gunslinger, he's not aware of that. At least not yet. He knows he's got to catch the Man in Black because there's something about the Man in Black that we don't understand is his way to the tower. His drive to get to the tower, we don't understand what the tower is, why he's trying to get there, what the Man in Black has to be able to help him get to it, or what purpose that plays. But he has to catch the Man in Black almost, again, for more either information or to prevent something that we don't know what is going on about. He just knows that
you don't even know if it's real. It could be like the Holy Grail, something you never find.
That's it, because these are all, even in his world growing up until this point in the Gunslinger, the Dark Tower is like a mythical thing, kind of like the Guardians or some mythical tale that like parents tell their kids to keep them to be good and do good things, right? These are all just, in their world, myths. And where do myths come from even in our world right now? They come from either things that did happen centuries ago and the stories kind of got bigger than the thing that happened, or maybe there's some actual truth and it's really out there. But in a world where there is no airplane travel and you can't just jump across the globe and go check it out, you got to trust either the story or you got to start walking. And so in his case, he started walking.
But we definitely get some sense that there is some residual nuclear or atomic waste around. Like, there's, as they said in Strange Brew, there's fleshiated mutants about.
Yes. Yeah, the what do they call them? The green men or something like that. There are radiated people in this story that are causing lots of problems for them as they're trying to get through.
Right, and they for the most part, of course, live underground. But you know, I guess at night they're less. But anyway, in the saloon, which by the way, the gunslinger, I'm not sure which version I read, but it was in the 2000s, so it was probably the most recent. Which is the shortest of the books, as I recall. It was maybe 200 or 300 pages long.
They get bigger each volume you move on to next. Yes.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that anyone sets the tone more than the gunslinger does. But I definitely got one with versions of like clippets of the past, which the Wolves of Kaya really goes into. You know, sort of the gunslinger, sort of their last stand, I guess, for civilization, which, well, they lost, which I don't think is really much of a spoiler here. But at some point, he felt that the town was touched with evil, and I don't know if it was in his head or he saw sort of signs in everybody's eyes and body movements that all of a sudden everything around him was a threat. It's sort of like that closing scene of The Sopranos, where he looks around and, you know, having trouble parallel parking is dangerous and nefarious.
Well, it's the key character in there that triggers all of that off is a religious woman named Sylvia Pittston, and the man in black, and whatever he did when he came through before the gunslinger in this town, she believes that she was impregnated by the man in black, who she believes is an angel. Right. Like of God, kind of an angel, right? And so she believes she's holding essentially a Jesus figure in her belly. And so when the gunslinger comes through, he's bringing a little bit of hard truth for everybody in the town. That was not an angel. And even though he may have resurrected this particular person in the town, this like drunk, as we say, he was, dead on the weed. He resurrected this man so that everybody saw him like he had godlike powers. We know them in the story as magic. He did maybe resurrect this person, but it wasn't a good act. And when he comes across Sylvia Pittston, they get into this little argument about who the man in black was and what his purpose is. And clearly the gunslinger stands up for the truth of that person is bad. I'm going to catch him and I will deal with him. Sylvia Pittston turns the entire town, who is her flock of religious, who come to me for your guidance and what to do, turns the entire town on him, calls him the interloper, and says that he is the devil demon, and the whole town, to do their righteous act of God protection, should go kill him. So the entire town goes after him near the end of his time in that town. And like you said, there's one way out of that. You have to lay waste to the entire town.
Right. So, and it's actually very well. First of all, it's ironic that the guy who says that he's the force of good slaughters everybody. So right now you're right.
It's exactly the problems, right? Everywhere he goes, he leaves death and destruction behind him. But he's your hero. Right. He's the good guy,
which is also very, very Greek, and a little bit Viking too, and also red weddingness. But she's, you could see in a town where it's so desolate that a little bit of hope goes a long way, especially when you've invested your uterus into it. And I guess she was a person with some status in the community before. One guy comes, impregnates someone, and says, "This is basically your Messiah. This is I'm an angel, and now you're getting your new Jesus." And he's saying, "No, that's the Antichrist." And they're looking around, going, "This is already hell." And then he lays waste to everybody. So. We're still not sure who's the hero. Just because someone was wearing black doesn't make him bad. I don't think anyone ever said Johnny Cash was terribly bad.
That's it.
So, but in any event, somehow out of this, obviously the gunslinger prevails, leaving Slaughter, but the boy Jake survives. He's spared, and if I remember correctly, sort of like Samwise Gamgee, he follows the gunslinger first without the gunslinger's permission, but then the gunslinger sort of gets used to having him around.
See, now Jake is the character that he drops into this thing because he sets up so many different the multiverse and different worlds travel potential. So Jake, he finds later on after he leaves the town, leaves the man in the desert that helps him. He goes on back into the desert, and he's about to collapse of hydration, but he makes it just to this place called the way station. And he collapses at the way station thinking that he sees the man in black, pulls his guns, and then it's lights out. He's just too dehydrated, hasn't had a drink. When he wakes up, Jake has been helping him with some water that he gets from this atomic pump in the way station. And they start talking, and he says, you know, you're a boy at this empty way station in the middle of the desert. Where did you come from? And Jake has no idea. He can't remember how he got there. He can't remember who really he is. He just knows that he's here and he's scared. And then the man in black came and he was really scared of that. So he hid from him, and then he moved on. And now the gunslinger came and he's still afraid of him as well, but he knew he needed help. And so he gave him some water. After a little hypnotizing trick that the gunslinger does with Jake, Jake starts to tell him about a place with skyscrapers and taxis and schools and backpacks and neckties and all of these like New York City kind of things. And he can tell this kid is not lying, but these are such fantastical stories. You came from what you're describing, but I find you here in the middle of this desert. So once again, you're back to what is going on? How did this kid get into the desert? The last thing the kid actually remembers was that he got pushed into the street, he got run over by a car, and he woke up here,
right
at the way station alone.
So is this heaven? Is it purgatory? Is it neither of those things?
Exactly.
Jake is typically short for Jacob, who famously wrestled with an angel,
Yep.
who might have been God, maybe not. I don't know. So did a God send an angel or something approximating the innocence of an angel to help the gunslinger? We don't know. We don't know. Right. All we know is that the kid seems good of heart. At some peril to himself, he nursed the gunslinger back to health. Although I would, the kid was like 12 or younger, right? He was sort of a young.
Yeah, 12 to 14, something right in there. Yeah, very, very young.
Yeah, tween basically.
Yeah.
And so, how much trouble could he be? How bad could he be? But I don't know. I don't remember the rest of the significance to the age. I think there was more to it. There's always more to it.
I think the significance of the age was that, so when they continue on, the gunslinger's like, look, I'm going to go. You can follow me if you like, or you could stay here, and you've maybe got some food enough to get through a while, but you're probably going to die here. So, of course, Jake follows him. Later on, when they're in the middle of their journey trying to reach the man in black, Roland goes into tales of his youth. Jake is maybe a year away or about the same age that Roland, the gunslinger, was when he won his guns. He was 14, the youngest of. That's not like a usual thing for a gunslinger in training. They start them very young, but it's not usual that they win their guns at 14. He was pushed into it by a wizard named Martin Broadcloak that was essentially trying to worm his way into the castle and the family of Gunslinger's father and his mother, who was kind of like royalty. And here's where the play on not just like Jedis and magicians and things, but also the Knights of the Round Table, right? They were saying that the guns of gunslingers were forged from the sword and the stone,
right,
from Arthur Eld's sword. So they melted that down and created the guns that are now what the gunslinger carries on his hips. So there's all this connection back to there's all this connection back to this whole like Knights of the Round Table. These are the good guys, but again, there's that play like you mentioned. He's so much death and so much like hard decision making that the gunslinger has in his wake. And the Man in Black, he healed somebody and moved on. Like, who's the bad guy here? So
yeah, and he's like Lancelot. He's like the child prodigy.
That's it.
And the way that and some of the skills with the gunslinger is not just that they can basically shoot from any angle and manipulate the bullets and all that, but they're using 6-shooters. They're using cowboy revolvers, but they can load and reload the cartridges by like spinning them in the air and catching them back on the, I don't know what it's called in the mill that catches the bolt or whatever that the catches on, and they basically reload lightning quick. So they don't have automatic weapons, but it's basically like automatic weapons in their hands.
Yeah, they look at automatic weapons like they're bulky, used by unskilled people, and if you had skills, the 6-shooters would be all you needed.
Right, and they're super heavy also. So while the gunslingers look like they're normal people, they obviously have like extremely strong, shoulders and forearms. We have a question: is Roland the hero of the story? Is he actually the most dangerous character in the story? And I think the answer is yes to both.
Yes. Yeah. Yep, I agree.
Yeah. Which maybe is the point. The point maybe is that the Dark Man, to the extent he exists, is sort of the yin to the gunslinger's yang, and one doesn't exist without the other. I'm reading a book I just saw a couple days ago. It's by James Corey from The Expanse. It's called the Contact series. I don't remember what this book is called because there's a whole bunch of them. But there's, the world that we're on is not Earth. So, but it's humans that may or may not have come from Earth. The point is that aliens come to a world that humans are alien too, but they've been there 3,500 years, and they're like the lesser species have the construct of good or evil to make excuses and for behaviors. There's either the strong and what you can do with your tool, or there is not. Basically a very simple way of looking at things, which resonates with me right now. Anyway, I don't know how much time we should spend on the gunslinger versus moving on, but
sure.
But I do think. Okay, so there's going to be spoilers in the show because these books some of them are decades old, some of them are more recent. There's been movies. Mike Flanagan from the Flaniverse on Netflix apparently is doing The Dark Tower. I have huge faith that he will.
I'm excited about that too, because he seems to have been doing very well with some of the other books that he's taken on.
And he did Dr. Sleep as well, which is a Stephen King property, and that was a fantastic movie, just a fantastic movie. But there will be spoilers here. But I think that the big mistake, and I don't know if the gunslinger will ever correct it, because this is a wheel of Ka. Remember, this book is part of a cycle, like many, like the yugas and many things are cycles. When they were going through, is it a mine shaft or caves? What's the difference? And there was a cave in. The gunslinger could not be stopped to whatever was in front of him. I think he didn't want to lose the glimpse of the Man in Black.
Yes.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but Jake fell into the sinkhole or the landslide or whatever it would be, the cave in below them. And I simply think that the gunslinger would have been redeemed, as mission would have been over, had he instead went back for Jake. And I always thought that was his critical error that maybe one day he'll solve, or one cycle he'll spend, but I'm not quite sure he will. But that's in the gunslinger, and I don't know if you agree with that at all, or if you want to sort of take us to what gets us there.
Yeah, that is a critical component of it. Sets up so many things in future books, as well as it gets you an insight to the motivations of what the gunslinger's quest, or what how important this journey is to move forward with. He saw it as he knew Jake was kind of like a pawn. But as they spent time crossing through the mountain in the caves and things under the world, he got to very much like this boy. And there at the very end, they're trying to cross that train trestle across this big chasm, and the man in black shows up at the end in the tunnel that's the way out of this thing they've been in for like a week in the darkness. And he tells him, look, you either come with me now and talk to me alone, and I'll allow that you will catch me and we will sit and talk, or you go ahead and you save this boy from this situation, and I'm gone. You'll never see me again. You will never catch me. And for whatever reason, the gunslinger believes him. So as the boy lost his balance and fell and is holding on to one dear life by one little component, the gunslinger could stop and reach down and either maybe pull him up or maybe bring the whole trestle down where both of them die. But instead he steps over him and keeps on walking. And the kid's like, I get it. There are other worlds than these, and drops to his death. Now, you kind of get the foreshadowing that death isn't exactly all it's cracked up to be, because if he died underneath the wheel of a car and all of a sudden he showed up at the way station, well, there are other worlds than these, he says, and he drops in the chasm. But yeah, you understand that Roland just decided the tower was more important than this boy,
and
he let him die.
And he believed the serpent. He believed the serpent.
Yes.
Yes. And he took the temptation instead of doing what he knew what was right, because maybe he's not such a good guy after all. His obsession, his hubris, whatever it is. The mission was more important, but I think at some point along the way, he forgot, or maybe the world crushed it out of him, that the mission was to protect. I mean, he was supposed to be a knight of the round table to protect society, even when society was gone. He was supposed to be the walking in Camelot, and instead so again and the kid also, with ultimate forgiveness, also in a very Jesus-y, sacrifice-y kind of way. It's like, I understand, you must do what you do, and again there.
He wasn't like, I get it, you go on, everything's cool. He's just more like, I see you. Yeah. I'm gonna drop. I see what you're doing, and I see what's taking you, and I accept. Not in a great way, but more like, I
understand.
I caught you. I get where you're at right now.
Still, and, he's a 14-year-old boy with that kind of presence. That's preternatural for that age, which, by the way, also parallels Roland at that age being preternaturally good at the violence and the tools of his trade.
Yep. So, okay. But then the gunslinger moves on, and he gets kind of what he was looking for. He got to talk with the man in black, but he doesn't get
palaver. They keep using the word palaver, which is a real word, but I don't know that I've ever heard it before this book.
So I think that was pulled from some of those spaghetti westerns. That was some of the original motivation for the gunslinger as a character. Some old western kind of things. I think palaver is pulled from that. But it's like he gets to have that talk.
It's like a talk with sanctuary kind of thing.
Yeah. It's so but what the man in black shows him more than tells him are images of like the universe. Because remember, you have no idea of anything but your life on this planet, right? Because they're so old school. They don't have their sciences. They don't have studies. They don't have universities, really. There's no like knowledge of space and atoms and molecules, and none of that is in the gunslinger's understanding. But all of that is what the man in black shows him. He shows him the expanse of the planet and the solar system and the bigger than that. And then he shrinks his view down into atoms and molecules and quarks and these tiny little things all in this vision. And after he gets done showing him these things, which are important if you're looking at it from the like scientific perspective of string theory and physics and quantum mechanics and all of these types of things that we're, even still now getting familiar with. He shows him these images, and it does connect that the Dark Tower is holding all of these things together, and that the size of things is what really messes with us. We see the world in I'm 6 feet tall and my pencil is much smaller than me and the atoms in the lead are much smaller than that. But if you keep going and going down and down, there are spaces in between even this hardness of this table. If you get bigger and bigger and bigger, you see a lot of the same things. An atom has a nucleus and has things swirling around it. You get really big, you've got a sun in the middle. It has these planets swirling around it. They look and act and follow the same kind of rules and physics, the same. So he kind of gets the concept that the Dark Tower is holding all of that existence together. So that if it goes, and then
like the tree of life in Loki too.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. He's bringing it all together, and he's got to hold it in place, and give it its balance. Right. You still don't have the reason for the Dark Tower and like what it actually is serving as a purpose. You don't understand like why it's in jeopardy yet, but you're still trying to understand what the heck is this thing that he's chasing,
or if it's true, or why he's trying to chase it. We don't. Yeah. We don't. I mean, it's supposed to be bad, but it seems like it's an essential part of the universe. I mean, it's not exactly like Deadpool Steve,
right.
His best friend was
right.
Steve in every universe. It seems like it's one place that is in a fixed point, the anchor of every universe there is. Wherever it is, it's the center with infinity amount of spirals, tendrils coming off. There are other universes which are, like you said, strings. They're right. They're all right next to each other. Sort of simultaneously at the same time, which is a big thought for my little head. So anyway,
and that's how that first one ends, right? So
yeah, and then we go into the second one, and we're like, well, what the hell's supposed to happen now? Well, now is where he starts picking up his fellowship.
Yes, and your horror scene, your lobstrosities.
Right. Yeah, which, I mean, so abruptly. Anyway, you can take us through what's important. If I get bogged down on every little thing, we'll probably be 6 hours.
Yeah. So he wakes up. So after his talk with the Man in Black, he's passed out. It was just the visions were a lot. He basically collapsed. He wakes up to the Man in Black. Looks like he's in bones. Like as if 10,000 years have passed is the way that he wrote it. The very next, I guess, environmental place beyond where they were having their chat on the other side of these mountains that they went through is the Western Sea. So he comes to the edge of that world. You've got an ocean in front of him. The only way to go at that point is north or south. South, I guess, is kind of closed off. So north it is. So he starts walking along the beach. But as he's waking up first on the beach there, coming to, there are these lobster things that don't look very threatening to him right off the bat. But when he reaches for his stuff, one of them comes in and lops off the 2 front fingers of his right hand, basically his trigger fingers. Yeah. So you just turned a gunslinger and you just cut him in half, essentially, by taking away 2 of his major fingers.
I still hate that.
It was such, you're like, what? This is just getting started, and now we've handicapped our main, antagonist here big time.
Although
his fingers are not coming back.
I mean, aside from that shock value and the handicap of our, in air quotes, hero, we do realize that the Man in Black had plenty of time to kill him if he wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that throughout all of Stephen King's stories really kind of gets me. The Man in Black, in his many different forms, he's really not in it to stop things from happening. He's in it just to mess them up and aim them into some other direction. He still wants to step back afterwards and see the results of his work, see the people that he's messed with go do their own things. He's not trying to be the one that kills. He wants to be the one that tweaks people so that they do their own killing, or that they, follow what he was kind of aiming them for. He's more of a guider of chaos.
Yeah, he's a trickster god, and he's more like some of the early interpretations of Satan versus all powerful, or almost all powerful devil, ender of worlds. More like he's relegated to trying to influence humans to do the wrong things, but he can't quite rule over, because God still rules over. But he's like a trickster. Also, I mean, again, spoilers, there are other monsters or bad guys throughout this book that we're introduced to, and we don't see them for a while, and they're posited, they're put forward to us as they're extremely, extremely dangerous. And once the gunslinger and crowd gets them, it's like in that spoof on YouTube, Pitch Meeting. It's actually super easy, barely an inconvenience. So I don't think the story really is about the bad guys being all that powerful. I think that's just the way that it's been drawn in the gunslinger's mind. I think, again, I think the story is the gunslingers, and I think very much like Jake, the gunslinger probably died and is in some sort of purgatory, but purgatory is just another universe, but it is a journey to somewhere. He just hasn't quite figured it out yet. But when we get to the end, I'll ask you if you agree with my conclusion on the end, which I probably teased part of it already, and certainly to you, maybe even to the audience. But yeah, so the gunslinger thinks he's going to get a delicious meal. I have lobsters, yummy, but they're lobstrosities. Radiation has made them the enemy of mankind, and they lob him off, and he's in big trouble. So what happens to our hero from this point?
So he starts getting sick from that attack, for one. So he's got a fever. He's not doing so great, but he keeps on walking, and he comes to a door. And there's a series of doors that have been laid out for him on this beach somehow, and each one of these doors has in the high speech language that is this language that they have in their medieval times world there.
Gilead
is the name, is the name of each of these characters that he's supposed to draw into his world and into his quest, that were laid out to him by tarot cards that the Man in Black showed him in the end of Gunslinger, which again kind of leads you to think maybe the Man in Black helped put these doors here. Like somebody had to have laid these out.
Oh, for sure. Gilead is a real place, and Gilead, or at least it was in the Holy Land. It's I'm going to call it Israel, because I'm not bound by the modern constructs of faux academia, which insists on calling someplace Palestine. But it's clearly not. It's more like Europe is where it is. The name is the same. And by the way, the gunslinger's name is Roland Dufresne or Deshane, something like that.
Deshane, yes. Yeah. Of the Chain is like how you would like translate it, which is kind of cool too, right? Of the Chain would be like the chain of Arthur Eld and all of his descendants.
And there's a poem which is sort of Arthuric, and it's called The Song of Roland. And I mean, in our world, in the real world, the Song of Roland. Mm-hmm. And if you look up Roland, it's sort of tied to Arthurian, though I'm not sure if one of the Knights of the Round Table was called Roland, but who knows? Because most of those stories were done over 700 years, and
sure.
At this point, I could write myself in as either end. Anyway, so there's the three doors where Roland has to go find his new band of heroes, who, by the way, do not present as heroes in the least.
Not at all. The first one is a man named Eddie, who's a cocaine mule, heroin addict. He's on an airplane at the time, Roland goes through the door and he's actually in the mind of this person. So he's kind of like, trying to he can talk to him, but he can also back off. He can take over his body if he needs to, but he needs to back off. And they go through getting Eddie through customs to try to get him to his boss, who we find is part of the network of bad guys that are all kind of interassociated or employed by this bigger corporation, who is also kind of backed by this bigger god, bad person, demon thing that we haven't really gotten a sense of yet, other than what the Man in Black mentioned at the end of The Gunslinger, which was that there's an ageless stranger that's out there that they don't talk about because even he's afraid of him. So it's this bigger scene, but these guys are part of it.
Satan
He gets
Conglomerate, Hell Incorporated.
Exactly. Is this huge network of kind of, again, like you said, they don't have to be excellent bad guys. They don't have to be like the baddest of the bad or the meanest of the mean. They're just and they do and they cause, or they're like minions of, right? And so he gets Eddie. Eddie doesn't really like or understand like what is going on. You just basically stole me from this real world where all I want is another hit of heroin, and now I'm in this beach with you. They continue on because what else is he going to do? He's now in Roland's world. They get to
one
the
of them
second
is dying of fever. The other one is dying of withdrawal.
Exactly, right? The both of them are just not in good shape. Then they get to the second door, and now, strangest of strangest, here's where things get very kind of intense, and intense for a couple of reasons. Number one, this would be the book that I think, because of the second character, Odetta Holmes, she has an alternate personality because of a tragedy that happened to her when she was a child. She had a brick land on her head that kind of, messed her up. And so she's got this very destructive alter personality, and they go back and forth holding on to time, in control of the body, as it would be. At some other point, this woman has also lost her legs. She's part of a wealthy Black family, but she's also from where Eddie, by the way, was from like 1987, I think it was the time in our world that he was taken from, now in Roland's. This Odetta Holmes was from like 1964. So we're talking like Jim Crow era, a lot of civil rights things going on. And he dove very, very heavily, Stephen King dove very heavily into the world that was that. And this is where a lot of people get a little, they don't get a good feeling about it, because he dives right into that racism. And there are some people that kind of got the feeling that he went maybe a little too far in that direction. Like there was some racist wording that had to be used, and you understand that it's in there because of you want to understand what kind of trauma that this woman was being just smacked at her on the daily because of society. But it's a very
world in 1964, which is part of her character. And I don't know, I think the blowback from that was a time when and we're still sort of crawling out of that, where if words are used for no particular reason, then they're hurtful. If words are part of an important narrative and why would you take that experience away from this character? And whatever. Stephen King is super progressive, as everyone knows, and then
very much.
And he also has a little bit of a reckoning. I mean, he had a history of sort of making the magical indigenous person or the magical minority. He fell into the magical Negro, the magical Indian quite a bit. So maybe he felt like he had a little bit of apologizing to do for falling into that.
Yeah.
In any event, she has two sides, but maybe they're not two sides. Maybe the accident tied her into, connected two different universes of her into one, which maybe is why she's so important.
It was exactly why, because when he finally brought her into his world, those two personalities got to actually see each other and reconcile a bit that they both do exist, but they're going to now exist as one person with a bigger range of skills. So when you need to get in gritty and be that hardcore, you can pull out that hardcore personality type-ish of characteristics and take care of business. But you are still have refinements. You're still a good person. You still have this, it's just a very, very deep character all the way through. But she's also in a wheelchair.
Right.
Problem is that this combining doesn't happen immediately. And between the second and the third door, she's going back and forth wrestling with this. And the very harsh character side, Detta Walker, she claims her name is very mean to these two guys, these two white men in her, racially charged world, and thinks that they're, out to get her or do something bad to her. So
and one's trying to boss her around, by the way. And, Rolo's going to be the leader feeling. Also.
Yes. So she looks at him as the really bad man, and then Eddie's kind of falling in love with the other half of her, and vice versa as they're making this journey. So he's kind of looking at her like, oh, I really like this girl. So it kind of makes him soft to the other side. So by the time they get to the third door, which is a very odd choice, because it turns out he's not trying to pull this third person into this world, but it does help connect. So if we're getting into real spoilers, the third door isn't exactly the third companion. It's a component of the third companion and the second one. So what I mean is there's this man in there, Jack Mort, who's kind of a serial killer type of guy. But he does it very, very passively. He'll push people into things, or he'll drop things or push things onto people. Turns out he's the one that dropped the brick on Susanna when she was a kid. He's also the one that pushed her in front of a train,
right,
which got her to lose her legs. And it turns out he's also the one who potentially has pushed Jake from the gunslinger in front of the car that killed him and sent him to the way station.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah, so this is where things start really swirling up in the plot line, because now as the gunslinger goes into his mind,
and also Mort
all of a sudden
Mort is dead. So
yes, right. So he's playing with these words and these names that are really great when you pick up on all these little Easter egg things. So all of a sudden he finds himself, the gunslinger is in the mind of the person who pushed the little boy into the street and killed him. And he couldn't kill the kid twice. He had already let him drop in the gunslinger, and now he stopped Mort from pushing him into the street, which triggers a paradox, because now if he didn't push him in the street, well, he didn't go to the way station. He didn't meet him in the way station in the gunslinger. They never made it to the end together to drop off and go talk to the man in black. That all didn't happen, but it also did, because now you've got parallel universes battling each other going in. So you get to the end of that, where he kills Mort and then has Detta and Odetta see each other. They kind of combine into the one person, so she's not trying to kill them anymore. And that brings us to the end of Drawing of the Three.
Well, I think we did a much better job of going through Drawing of the Three than the Gunslinger, but I think the Gunslinger is sort of world setting. So, all right, so
it absolutely is.
So what happened? So we have the Drawing of the Three, and we have new Jake, right?
Not yet, because Jake is still just not dead. But he's alive somewhere back in New York.
Okay,
right?
He doesn't join their fellowship. It's just the three of them.
Yeah. All you have right now is Susanna is who she names herself. So she doesn't like Odetta, doesn't like Detta. She chooses Susanna for whatever reason.
Fair enough.
Then you've got Eddie and you've got Roland. So now the three of them begin in the Wastelands, third book, where they're training and they're trying to get them, get these two new students up to gunslinger level, because he sees the gunslinger in the two of them, but he's got to draw it out and get them trained. And so they're going through a lot of this. And here's where the first of these old stories turns into something that is actually real.
Isn't he also trying to train himself on his left hand and his
this is where he gives one of his guns to them. They're like kind of going back and forth using it because he realizes I'm not a double gun anymore. I'm a left-handed gun only. Yeah. So he's kind of getting his, stupid right hand to understand, quit it. And he's got to get his left hand to realize you're it. Right. They're both, he's ambidextrous in both for when it comes to shooting, but he's got to get under control that this is no longer a weapon.
Right.
But here comes one of the Guardians.
So he gave up part of himself.
Yes, he did. Lobstrosity took it, but he had to give away his gun. That gun is definitely part of himself.
Yeah.
Right. So, beginning of the third book, in comes one of the Guardians of the Beam, who is this ginormous bear robot combo thing with a little radar dish on his head that is taking signals and communicating to something that we never really kind of get connected into. But it's kind of our idea that every device is connected to the cloud and you're getting your information from that somewhere. This bear is taking his information from something, but it's still an android, but it's humongous.
Or the Dark Tower.
Potentially, yes, right? That's the other thing, maybe from the beams of the tower. And so this bear comes in because he senses people are in his woods. And he comes and he almost kills Eddie, but they get, clearly they're going to survive these things. But all of a sudden, the bear's back trail, where he came from, led them down the back trail, and they got to the beginning of, now we're getting introduced to the beams of the tower. Because what the guardian bear was guarding was the edge of that world where the beam was being projected from the Dark Tower to this location. Now they've got a path. This is the beginning of their actual journey where I guess this electromagnetic potential beam that is coming from the Dark Tower, you can kind of see it in the clouds. You just see the clouds kind of roll down the beam's path. And so as long as they can keep that in their view, they know that the end of this beam is the Dark Tower. Right. So now they're really on the path.
They found the yellow brick road.
That's it. So throughout going down that path, Wizard, the Wastelands, this third book is one of my favorites just because of how much goes on in it, and that is kind of neat in the ties back and forth between our worlds and his. Some of the old things that are showing up in their world, they have to try to get Jake back into the story. And the way that happens is, since Jake is now alive when he should be dead in New York, the gunslinger should have never met the boy, but he did, but now he didn't because he saved him. The both of them are kind of going crazy. They've got two warring voices in their head that are constantly battling. There was a boy, there wasn't a boy. You died. No, you didn't. You're clearly alive. So the two of them are going nuts in their own two worlds. And they finally make it to a speaking ring. It's like a place where demons happen, and like magic is still kind of a thing. A little side story on Eddie. Starts to get some of his confidence back, that his older brother, the co-heroin addict in his life, kind of always beat him down. He's trying to make a key out of some piece of wood. And he doesn't know exactly why, but it's got to be perfect. He knows it's got to be perfect, so he's got to get his confidence to make it perfect. Jake finds a key in his world. It's just one of those things. And they're coming to a culminative of trying to get Jake from that world into this one. Jake just wants to get back to the gunslinger's world because he feels it. He knows that's like, this world is not real to him where he's living in New York. He's got to get back to the real one because of this whole experience that he had in this other version of himself. So he makes it to this haunted mansion, gets through the haunted mansion to try to use his key. On the other side, they're trying to create this door and use their magic key so that both can open up and they can yank Jake through. There's a lot more drama that goes on in the middle of all of that to make it all happen. It was a very long section in the book, but Jake finally emerges and the true third companion of Roland's is finally drawn. Jake rejoins the cast of characters there.
Right, the Fellowship of the Key. So
that's it. Right. That's it. Which both keys kind of disappear into oblivion because they served their purpose on that. They just needed to get them into this world. So now the true band is together. They're off and walking. The next hurdle is the City of Lud. Now, the City of Lud is kind of like a New York, but way in the future, and after desolation is like demolished all of the people, and now everybody's kind of crazy in there. And there's some special monorail train that goes from that world or from that city and takes off down somewhere, and they all just know somehow that they need to find this train and get on it. There's nothing that really told them, the train is going to get you to a thing, but they all feel it. Jake felt it because he's kind of got the touch, the shine, connections to The Shining, and to the second book on that, the Dr. Sleep.
Right. And the Talisman had the shine. Lots of books had the shine. And
the Firestarter, Carrie. Yeah. These are all children with the shine. These are all connected concepts and themes that are just swirling this whole universe.
And I think the shine also, the old woman in Colorado had the shine. And the shine, I mean, if we're to take it further, is just a more of a connection to Ka, so that you can, see in all directions of Ka.
That's right. It's also the connections where they find these kids that have the shine. Those are like thin places in the world where the beams have been broken down, and now the worlds aren't so stable and solid. And now you have potentials where you've got overflow from one world to the next.
Stargate, so to speak.
Yep. Some are portals of the mind. Some are portals of physical ability to step through. There's all of this going on. So once they get through there, they find the train, which is one of my favorite scenes through all of the whole thing, with the exception that it's a cliffhanger ending at the end of that book. You get to the very beginning of them trying to deal with this mad train, which is essentially a supercomputer that has a train component of it, and the computer has gone crazy. It's been going for thousands of years. It's an AI that essentially just doesn't know what its purpose is anymore, and it's looking to check out. And so you've got this mad, crazy train driven by a lunatic AI system, and they have to get on it.
Well, it originates in a city called Lud, which is obviously a city which rejects technology because they're full of Luddites.
Yes.
So the AI, since it is in fact artificial intelligence, something, again, Stephen King very ahead of his time with this. Well, maybe not. I mean, depending on when he wrote this book, I mean, he was certainly not the only one. I mean, I guess going back to Isaac Asimov, or earlier probably, but still, I need not go down that wheel of karma again. But yeah, so the AI without a purpose, is intelligent, it's sentient, and it's gone mad. It's just going in two directions, back and forth.
Yeah, and it was meant to serve the people, but the problem is the people went crazy. Right. They demolished each other, and so he kept serving whatever they wanted. And so when they wanted something to tell them what to do, well, okay, that's his purpose, is to serve the people. I'm going to tell you something to do. Go kill that guy.
It goes crazy because it's adapting.
Yep. So again, like you said, way before his time on certain things, writing them in. Where this was, I think, 1991 was when that book also got published. So AI wasn't a real thing just yet, but it was in the books. It was in the science fiction world of thought, androids and all of those things for a long time. So, goes through all of that. Again, with these connections of other literary works, this is, again, one of the things I think that is really a contribution that Stephen King brought into the world of getting people to branch out and go look for these other works of art and literature that exist in the world to start reading up on, because it's not just his backstory to create this universe. It is all these authors that have created all these amazing, great works of art and literature that kind of make this such a rich world. All the way back to the very beginning of the thing, which was the child Roland to the Dark Tower came. That very long poem that he kind of, if you read through that, it really does kind of poetically lay out the framework of the Dark Tower whole saga. He didn't necessarily, to his claim, do it out on purpose, but it was a driving force, and it kept showing up. So,
yeah. Also, something else that kept showing up was Elton John's "Someone Saved My Life Today."
Yes, it did. That one starts playing a big, big force, I think, in the 5th book, when you start getting some of his other characters brought in from other books, like Salem's Lot's Father Callahan.
Right.
Starts becoming a humongous part of the Wolves of the Calla, because he's there. He's in the Calla. He's in Roland's world. All of a sudden, this guy from a book that was, from something he had written, decades ago,
right, like
shows up here
1974.
again. Yeah. And these he has these very integral places in this story to lay out.
By the way, another book which is fantastic, which nobody seems capable of making a good version for TV or movies. I think it shouldn't be that difficult.
Here's where I'll say that the majority of movies that have been adapted from Stephen King's books have really struggled. Like, every once in a while you get someone that does a really good job, like The Body becoming Stand By Me. That was one of the first that I think really hit a box office success. They took the short story, they did a really good thing with it. But when you look back at a lot of the stuff that came out in the 80s of a lot of his books, first off, the connected stories that all hook into the Dark Tower, that when you read the book, you get these components. Those were completely stripped away from every movie that was ever made from all of his things. So if you're a book buff and following some of these connections, you can't also be a movie buff and get the same experience. You don't get those things.
Yeah,
so
it seems really weird that if you're making a movie based on one of the most successful authors of all time, one of the things you're trying to appeal to is the people who read the books and love the books. And to not put in just even a touch of that. I think they got better with things like Shawshank and Green Mile and whatever, but those were just better movies also. And now with like Castle Rock as a series and whatnot, they
thought that was great.
Yeah, like I said, Dr. Sleep. And I have a lot of confidence in Mike Flanagan. I think it's Mike. And if he can do justice to the Dark Tower, I think there's going to be a lot of that. Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for future projects, which can, I don't know, will maybe keep me not canceling my Netflix subscription, because I don't think there's anything I've enjoyed remotely on that channel in 5 months.
It's been a while, yeah. The biggest failing, I think, of the attempt to make the Dark Tower movie was that he focused on the wrong stuff. He wanted to focus on the battle between Roland and the Man in Black. But if you really understand the gunslinger, that was not the focus. It was the drive to get him to keep going, to try to talk to him. But the bigger focus in the bigger world was not that. And then compound that with the fact that they took details of 5 of the books and crammed them all into this one movie without any real context. So if you don't understand and haven't read all of the books, you're watching this movie like, what is going on? What is this plateau with this thing? And why, there's just packed too much into a tiny bucket. You got 10 pounds of info, a 1 pound bucket, and it didn't all fit.
Exactly right. All right, so back to they're on the train to somewhere.
Here's where Wizard and Glass kicks in, 4th book, right? They actually get to finish the cliffhanger. The Wizard and Glass book is humongous, for one. Again, each volume gets bigger than the last one.
Yeah.
And you kind of get 2 stories out of this. You get the completion of the train ride. You get the first, which is very cool, tie into the realizing that he's tying in other stories into the Dark Tower, because at the end of the train ride, they land in Topeka, Kansas. They landed not just Topeka, Kansas, but Topeka, Kansas, dead in the middle, following the plague that decimated the Stand, the world of the Stand. So now they are literally in the Stand. You've got a newspaper article telling all about what's been going on with the Captain Flu trips. You see signs of, the Dark Man is in the West, and the Mother Abigail is in Nebraska and head for that. All these little things are, and you're like, oh, this is cool. This is really, really cool. You just, I get really kind of hyped up when you start tying things in together and you start seeing it and you understand the world. And so again, if you haven't read The Stand, you're missing on these things. It's kind of like if someone's going to lay out what order should I read Stephen King material? You kind of got to have Salem's Lot in there. You got to get It read. You got to get The Stand read. Then you can jump into The Gunslinger, and then you can go to the two. But then you got to jump back and read this and this and this to really catch these things as they're laid out. Because I think if you read all of the Dark Tower first and then start going around the connected pieces, you're kind of like, wait, where did that connect into? Rather than having all of that material as a foundation, and now we're jumping into it. You're like, oh, I know where they are. This is great.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't one of the main characters' names in the Talisman also a kid named Jake?
I don't now you got me thrown. I don't remember if that kid's name was Jake or not. God, now I'm gonna have to look that up because I'm not sure which they called him. But the Talisman is a very big connecting piece. The Talisman is one of the wizard's glasses. Yeah. Right. So now if we're getting into the wizard and glass, there are 13 of them. There are these magic balls. So this is also kind of a call out to J.R.R. Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings series, where they've got the orbs that they were communicating with the bad guy in that one as well.
The Palantir.
The eye. Yes. Right. So there's different colored orbs, and these are supposed to have been made back in Merlin days. So
by the way, Palantir is making all this AI and these chips and whatever. Very much orbs, and yes, they're evil.
Yeah, big time. There's a lot of AI scary stories in the news just from this past week right now.
I know. I should bring back the name Garden of Doom because that's what
yeah. It's a unique world we live in, and we're watching a lot of these things play out.
Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times.
Scary. So you get to finish, and like I said, they're in this Kansas world, and then again they start walking down the turnpike. In this case, they start introducing things like thinnies, which is kind of like a swirl of thin world. It's a place where you could be tossed into any universe, at the whim of this thin spot.
It's like a two-dimensional. It's like two-dimensional worlds, basically.
Yes, and it'll toss you into a third.
Yes, if anybody read the Three-Body Problem sequels or fan fiction that came out that was authorized, you know what kind of problem those can cause. If you live in a three-dimensional world and all of a sudden you meet a two-dimensional world, that's not good.
No, it's going to be a problem. So they're trying to avoid these, although they think they probably went through one to end up in this, not in Midworld, in Roland's world anymore. Now they're in this Kansas, and they catch on that it's not their world because Eddie left in 1987. This is 1986, and Eddie's New York was fine. There was no flu. Right. And they notice a different car that's in the parking lot, a Takuro Spirit. Is an automaker that no one has ever heard of. And so it's, these little things that are kind of cluing them in that they're not in the world that they thought. They're in some alternate version. So as they're going, here's where he takes a massive jump backwards in storytelling, and Roland tells them about his childhood, tells them about the test of manhood that he went, and that he ended up going to this town of Magus, which is another kind of like Mexico style kind of environment. They've got they're all wearing like ponchos and serapes and the big hats and everything, and so like the whole feel of that world that he's in there is kind of somewhere in the South. That they've got that kind of culture going on. And through all of that, he's talking about there's one of the wizard's glasses was back there. One of the characters of badness that are being kind of manipulated and used to do bad things by the Man in Black and potentially the Crimson King is this this guy named John Farson. And now John Farson is like a militant. He's the world of the gunslingers. He looks at them kind of like the Imperials, and he's going to be the anarchist that comes in and gives the people back the world from all of these. Yes.
By the way, you mentioned the Crimson King. Is the Crimson King sort of the ageless one that no one speaks of?
That's kind of the idea that they're leading into, right? Again, when Stephen King identified him as the ageless stranger and the gunslinger back in the 70s and early 80s, he had no idea who the Crimson King really was. But the Crimson King has been playing a part in so many different things. He was a huge component in Insomnia. That's another very big connected piece on this one. You get a character in Insomnia. The whole point of Insomnia, not to spoil on there, is to save a kid. Essentially, save one kid, very, very important kid. His name is Patrick Danville. You don't even really get to know the kid's name until near the end of the thing, or that any of that's going on. But by saving this kid, he's able to show up later on in the Dark Tower series. But in Insomnia is where you first get to actually see the Crimson King as a character who is messing with the mind of this one person, this Edward Deepno, in that particular world, to start causing havoc and change and problems in that world. So Crimson King becomes a real character. Now,
is Edward Deepno different than our Eddie?
Yes, it is. So there's another name connection, but in the world of Insomnia, he's an antagonist who's causing all kinds of problems. In the world of the Dark Tower, he's a very helpful friend of the owner of the Rose and the lot that we'll get into here in a little bit. That is a lawyer and kind of a Jiminy Cricket on the shoulder of this other character that Roland needs the help of, but he's kind of a pain in the butt. And so Ed Deepno,
He's a lawyer.
Well, the pain in the butt guy is a book owner, or is a book collector. Somehow his family had a lot of money. He's kind of squandered it in the life that he lives. Ed Deepno is his friend and is trying to kind of help him through the rest of his life. So trying to help him make good decisions. But we'll get into that one. As you finish.
The important part is Stephen King's trying to tell everyone that lawyers are your friends.
In this particular sense, yeah. This lawyer is supposed to be helpful. So, things that you need to have and the access of at certain times, for sure. So,
there you go.
But the whole telling of Roland's childhood thing, I'm back and forth. I enjoyed the time in the past, but ultimately it's more of a world building book that kind of slows down the progress of the Hunt for the Dark Tower, just to kind of build his background story.
I agree. That and the Wolves of Kaya were. I love those stories as a standalone.
Yes.
In a lot of ways, I enjoyed reading them more because they were more like a traditional, fantasy, swords and sorcery kind of a story that I was used to. But I think the big thing is that at some point there was a better time in this world. The gunslingers were sort of the protectorates of it.
Yes.
And evil was coming, but unlike most stories, they failed.
Yeah. Their society collapsed. The anarchist guy, the Farson and his forces, they really did a good job at what they were trying to disrupt, and they disrupted the whole chain of gunslingers to where Roland was the last.
Right. And Roland, whether he found his compadres or whether he just has survivor's remorse, it's not entirely clear. I got it more was just survivor's guilt that he did all that he possibly could, and but there were some things where he definitely felt like he failed or could have done differently. But I mean, at the end there was a handful of them on a hill being surrounded on every side, and and nobody threw the ring of Mordor into the fires. So
yeah, exactly. It was the time when the ring actually it survived and things went real bad. So all of his friends lost on that battle. Somehow he survived, was the lone survivor of it. So you get some of that backstory, which does play a cool side role because all of the here you go. The graphic novels that kicked in from a lot of that, I really enjoyed a lot of those as well, where Stephen King gave Mr. Firth a lot of leeway and license and legal ability to start creating the world of his backstory on his own. So a lot of that wasn't necessarily written by Stephen King. It was just him giving license for the world to be grown by more people. So he's got teamwork involved.
Well, yeah, and that makes sense. I didn't know that at the time. I just figured that Stephen King. I mean, there was somebody who told me to read the books and said that there's this whole world of fan fiction, but it's authorized and some of it's. But I didn't really pay much attention. I just read the books, and like I said, I enjoyed them very much. A traditional story. In some ways, I missed them. In some ways, I enjoyed them. But it was a rather long digression away from our path. Maybe more world building than probably was actually needed. But again, it painted the picture. We had Camelot. The world was okay. It was in some sort of order. Good basically ruled to the extent if you believe it was good. But obviously not everyone agreed. And, the bad guys won basically. And the world of the gunslinger and what we're going through now in some of the universes anyway is obviously the result of the bad guys winning in one or more dimensions, I'll call them, or parallel worlds.
Well, that was really the push that they meant to get from the Backflash was, why is Roland going to the Dark Tower? And the reason why was because when they got the one ball that was in Wizard and Glass, which was the pink one, when Roland got a hold of that ball and went into it, it showed him the wrong that is going on at the Dark Tower, and that all of his friends were dying because of this wrong. His world collapsed because of this wrong. The beams exist and they're being destroyed. And the Dark Tower is the only place where maybe something could be done to prevent it, but that it was laughing at him as well, saying, you'll never make it and you'll destroy yourself by trying, and everyone that you love by doing this. But if you don't, the whole world's going to fall apart because it's being destroyed. So that all got shown to him right at the end of Wizard and Glass with the one wizard's ball that he was able to get and try to bring back to his father. So that drove, was trying to show his whole drive to reach the Dark Tower. So he's explained all this to his friends now. Then they go in, and here's where we take a nice little side trip into the Wizard of Oz. Because as they come out of this night of telling this tale of his childhood and his past and the wizard ball and the whole thing, they come to this enormous Oz Emerald Palace Tower. And they don't understand what's going on. The travelers have to explain to Roland what this looks like, because he doesn't know anything about the Wizard of Oz. When they do, they go in, and sure enough, they played on the Wizard of Oz with the Man in Black and this other character from the Wastelands that he pulled forward into there and had him be like the patsy of the voice of the wizard, all just for the fun of the Man in Black, essentially. Because once they got to talk to him again, he escaped out every time that Roland tries to shoot him with his guns, it's always blanks, or it never works.
Right.
Until he went for the gun that Jake had brought into the world, which is a Ruger, a standard from our world, standard single shot gun. And that one actually scared the Man in Black to despair. And he's like, nope, that one could potentially do problems with me. I'm out.
Yeah, that we're gonna. He's doesn't have the same power in that world, I suppose. By the way, cheap plug. I have done a show on the Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland Through the Looking Glass with my guest, the Reverend Dr. David Parry and Aaron Stevens, who some of you here on the Sports Jedi Network know as Aaron Stevens. Others know him as Damian Sandow from WWE. So he's also a Freemason and a master of esoteric, or at least a student of esoterica. So, and of course, the Reverend Doctor is a master of all things thinking and Gnosticism and whatnot. So, fun discussion there that has some tie into the pro wrestling world that a lot of people on this network enjoy. Actually, Aaron Stevens has been on 3 shows, so you may want to, if you enjoy the one, check out the others. All right, sorry. Back to our story.
So, or Stephen King's story. So the travelers wake up after this Oz side trip, and they're back on the beam, and they're back in their world, and they're not sure exactly how that went from the one back into the other, but back to the story essentially.
Are we supposed to take it that because the Ruger could scare the Man in Black, and that was the same world that the plague never hit, that maybe that was a world where something happened that did not allow the Man in Black to have the kind of power? Maybe even the Crimson King had less power in that world.
Well, you got to remember too, in the Stand, the Man in Black didn't get what he wanted. Right, the people in that world stood. They made a stand, and they kind of essentially defeated him and what he was trying to do, blew up his little Vegas there. And so maybe the power that he thought he had in that world was not quite as absolute. And there were things about it that he couldn't just make happen because he wanted to. Yeah, he's got weaknesses.
But this one seems to be a fatal weakness, and this one seems to be tied to the world where maybe Jack Mort was him, or his, and Jack Mort failed in that killing of Jake, who is maybe our sort of how the Dark Tower is the anchor for the universe, good or bad. That maybe Jake is our anchor for the good in the universes.
Yeah, so that's where you lead into one of the terms that they threw around a little too loosely in the movie, which would be Keystone Earth.
Keystone Earth,
right? So that there's essentially one Earth that's just a little more alive, or a little more solid or real feeling when you're in it.
And well, that's a very Earth-centric thing to do. I mean, we do it in the MCU. Earth 616 is the, is our keystone, where everything that's important sort of, has to occur and converge upon. And I think from a storytelling perspective, it does make a certain amount of sense. Though I'm not sure if our Roland's world is the Keystone one, or
it is not.
It's not. Right?
It is not. No. Yeah. And I don't even know if the first Jake, his was not. The second one, I don't think his was either. But they eventually make it into a Keystone Earth there at the end of Wolves of the Kala, and into Song of Susanna is where they really start playing into that place. But Keystone Earth is also apparently where Stephen King lives.
Yes.
So
here's where we start getting a little bit.
Well, so it kind of did as well to me, and then I looked at it from a different perspective. Yes, the author wrote himself into these stories. He starts showing up at first in the Wolves of the Kala, where the Eddie and Roland find themselves in Maine, and there really is a Gilead, Maine, by the way, as well. I've been there, and there is a little church there that looks like the town center in the Wolves of the Kala. So that's kind of neat if you're going to go travel to Maine and check some places out. But the writing yourself into the story, one thing that did for me is it connected these fantasies, these fictional places that your imagination is able to travel to, and it kind of strung it together into the world that we actually live in. It was the beginning of making demons real, making the potential of vampires real, making the potential of switching between worlds that could be real. They may not be real here, but maybe if there's a thin place where a writer's mind, and this is the first concept of this that I love, the idea that an author, a writer, somebody who thinks that they're writing fiction, what they're actually doing, they're not creating something out of nothing. They're feeling the frequency of this other world that is just close enough by, or maybe that they're the right in-tuned person that hears the right frequency, that hears this other world, and they're getting things from it, images from it, their feelings from it, and they're turning it into a story. They're writing it down. They're writing down what they felt and what they saw, and what's going on in this other world. And not that came out of nothing, but that actually came from some other universe.
Right.
So that tied in the string theory stuff for me. It tied in all of the books that I've ever written, turned them into potentially real places, actual, tangible, I can get there places, which can scare the crap out of you if it's something like It, or, so your monster movies or something like that. Or it could be fantastic if you're, talking, I don't know, what your Star Wars or your Lord of the Rings or things where magic is real, right? So,
and also it can explain why you write the same book. And like one time a dog is demonic, one time a car is demonic, one time a truck is demonic.
There's things like that. Those are the thin places, right? That was the idea.
Yeah, very thin. Yep. Definitely not over commercialization. Just just said other universes were talking to him.
Yep. Yeah. So he just happens to hear from these particular universes. Other writers hear from others. Sometimes they cross over. So yes, he does become a character.
Kid has telekinesis. Kid can start fires. Yeah.
Yep.
Not similar.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Danny Torrance, and I can't remember the girl's name in the Firestarter, but Firestarter, and then Carrie, of course, they've all essentially got the same talent, or the same, we'll call it a talent.
The muse was real. It's just there's lots of different muses from lots of different multiverses. That's all.
Yep. And how they use it is up to them.
That's right.
So, but yeah, they get to visit him in, I think it was the 1970s, when he had just started writing The Gunslinger as a book, but hadn't really gone anywhere with it. So it was a cool concept that the thing that got him off his butt and back into writing this story that he thought was just too big. It was too big for him to even start and tackle and get written down. Roland and Eddie motivate him to get back to it and say, look, you need to write these things because the forces that are working against them, they don't want the truth to be out there so that they can manipulate it and do whatever. You're the only one who's hearing what's actually going on. You need to pen this down. It's important. And so they kind of kick his undermind into gear again. Get him right.
We need you to write so that we can continue our story. Otherwise, we're stuck here with you, and we're going to eat all your beef jerky.
Potentially, or they're not going to have the skills to make it, or they're not going to be able to do the right things or get the right stuff or the right people involved. So, yeah, so they kick that back into gear. Then they get back into the story again, and here's where something that happened in the third book when they were drawing Jake into the world. One of the demon that controlled the circle where they were trying to do that didn't just let them do it. That's their circle. You're not just going to go get your little boy and do it on your own. You're going to have to pay a price. And the price that had to be paid in that book was that Susanna had to keep the demon under control. In other words, she was essentially being sexually assaulted by this demon, at the time. And what they kind of hint throughout that time and up to this is that she may have caught pregnant from this demon interaction. So what kind of pregnancy that's going to turn into when you're assaulted by a demon, who knows? That's going to be like this big secret.
It also harkens back to the gunslinger with the woman in the saloon.
So I didn't know how deep we wanted to get into the spoiling on things, but yes, the original circle that the gunslinger got some information out of in the Gunslinger, something I don't think we touched on here today. He had to pay the same price. He had to be sexually assaulted by the demon in that circle, and then happened to Susanna later on in the book 3. So once you get into the end of Wolves of the Kala, which is essentially the Magnificent Seven or the Seven Samurai story, right? It's Stephen King's version. You've got 7 band of warriors that came together to protect some town or some people that's being taken advantage of by some bigger force or whatever. And in this case, it's the wolves, who are essentially robot warriors sent from Thunderclap, which we'll get into here in a little bit, to steal steal kids, because the kids that are made by this particular group are often twins. And by taking one, there's something in the twins' brain that they need in Thunderclap for some, mystery purpose. So they keep stealing their children every 27 years. So they allow a generation to grow. These wolves come in, they take these kids, whether the town likes it or not, because they have these like laser weapons and explosives. And this town has like bows and arrows and sticks and rocks. And so you're not going to win that battle every 27 years. And so they kind of get in the habit of just allowing it. Right. So now the gunslinger comes along to try to protect the kids of this town. So
it's more like the Wild Bunch, in that everyone dies at the end, practically.
Yeah. Well, they essentially take care of the things. Here's, like you said, the bad guys with all this buildup, they don't put up this humongous bit of a fight, because this whole protect the town thing is over in like 5-10 minutes.
Right.
Essentially, when it all comes down to it. And they took care of business because they had the element of surprise and the whole thing. But one thing that kind of starts to happen in there is the introduction of the 13th wizard's glass, which is the most dangerous one, is the black one. It's the orb of just chaos. And for some reason, Father Callahan had it in a box underneath his church. And it has just been something that he's had there ever since the Man in Black sent him into the Kalas and gave it to him and said, you're stuck with this. And he kept it, but it's just been, he built a church on top of it to try to like keep it calm and keep it asleep, because it's bad news. Well, somehow that influences this elemental demon or whoever that was in the speaking ring, who has now somehow become part of Susanna, the dual personality gunslinger. It's become kind of part of her. It's kind of taking over her because of the baby that's inside of her. So that baby essence kind of brought with it the demon, who's now taking over or possessing Susanna, who then steals the ball, takes off in the middle of the fight or just after it's done, goes to this cave that has another door, where the Father Callahan came into the Kalas in the first place, and disappears. Takes the ball with her, door slams behind her. The gunslinger and Eddie, who's now, this is his wife now at this point in the story, is now gone. And so now they can't just keep on going to the Dark Tower, because one piece of their band is now taken off into some other world through the door.
With the pretty important item.
Humongously important item. This black ball orb. So two important items: the gunslinger person, their companion Susanna, and this black orb of power.
And
So,
the fetus demon.
Yeah, and potentially, yes, this demon that's in her baby or that's in her belly that they don't know. They now know that this is a thing, but they figure we have to go, we have to get her, we have to save her.
Little
So,
Ozymandias.
yeah, it gets very crazy in there. In comes the Song of Susanna book, which happens primarily in New York Keystone, because it's the Song of Susanna book to me is more like a explain the plot book. Your people have to go now into New York. You're getting a lot of details of like what had happened to make the Crimson King be who he is. You get a little more explanation about him, about what he's trying to do with the Dark Tower to bring it down. Because apparently the Crimson King is immortal. He can't die, but he's been around for so long of eternity that he's had enough. And the only way for him to die is to make all of existence go away. So he figures if I can make all of existence go away, I can finally be done. Because he tried to commit suicide multiple times. It never worked. This is his surefire plan. Bring the Dark Tower down. Everything stops. I can finally not be. Right? So the big plot gets revealed on that and how to get there. The band finds a way to get into that New York, but they get kind of split up to where they have to save this representation of the Dark Tower that exists in Keystone, New York, which is a rose in the parking or in some like desolate lot that is owned by that book owner we talked about, Calvin Tower of all names, Calvin Torin, who's now Calvin Tower. He's a book owner who somehow through his family line has been given the responsibility to protect the manifestation of the Dark Tower in the Keystone world, which is this wild rose that is growing in the middle of what became New York City. The rose was there first. New York City grew around it. Now
there's a rose in Spanish Harlem.
There it is. So
almost like the rose is almost like a talisman, perhaps.
Exactly. It's the manifestation of that thing. So the chance of killing the tower is also a potential of you hurt this rose, you can also hurt the tower. So he's a protectorate family he believes it in his undermind, but he doesn't quite believe everything. He's a little more like, I'm just a book owner and I don't want to be, problemed with the world. And so he's kind of he's not in it for himself. He's not in it for the grand picture of being a good person. He just happens to have been given this responsibility because it's handed down to him with his lineage.
Right. So he's not a hero. He just has an obligation.
Yeah. And he's barely fulfilling it. Barely. And he would like to be rid of it, but he also kind of like wants something out of it. He's like, well, because he doesn't trust that the gunslinger is who he says, but he knows it's true. So Eddie and the gunslinger end up going to try to deal with him. He sells them the lot that has this rose in it in New York City, gives them control over it. They create the Tet Corporation to be able to make this all legal. Ed Deepno is his lawyer friend who writes it all up and turns it into a legal sales document to make the corporation become a real entity in law and make the sale go through to that entity. So there's a lot of that going on in there, which I thought was kind of a cool aspect. Again, ties in something that is real in our world that can connect into Roland's fantasy world.
Well, they needed to find the human monies as well, though. As all of us know, you don't need to be a corporation to buy property. But okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess you do if there's no birth certificates or social security numbers for you in this particular universe.
Yes, corporations are how you hide all those details behind. Put a wall in front of it. All right.
Right.
So they use the corporate world to do a little bit of good in this case, or tried to,
Sure.
right?
Or did
And
they?
then the other half of the band had to try to save Susanna. Problem with that is that the Susanna in New York was driven by that demon part of her, and she got them all the way to the bad guys who were trying to get this baby born. And so the other half of the band followed that path and got back over to where she was trying to be born, which brought them all back into the gunslingers world because they didn't want the baby to be born in this, Keystone, New York. It needed to be born in the world where the Crimson King is and where the Dark Tower is and where it's really necessary, because
Well,
there's a
it's already
whole
happened and caused great problems in Rosemary's Baby, in The Omen, in The Omen 3, in Immaculate. I mean, it's been Keystone Earth has had plenty of its own problems with this.
Yep. And Keystone will be taken care of as long as we get them over here in this bad spot.
That's right.
Earth is going to have they're going to get it. They're pounding.
Kill the baby, save the world. That's exactly the moral of the story.
Yep. Yeah, let the baby come up. It's going to be the harbinger of death for everybody. Yeah,
right.
The whole bit. And that was kind of what they drove on this one, which when you finally get this kid in the world, here's where I'm a little like, it fell so short, fell so flat for me because this kid did nothing.
Right. Do you kill baby Hitler? The quintessential moral question. Do you kill baby Hitler?
Well, so the baby is born and it's this like half spider boy, super powerful mental challenge, brings down the Man in Black, brings down all these things and it just has all these abilities, but it can't kill Susanna, who shoots one of its legs off as a spider. And all it does throughout its entire existence, when you get into the final book in the 7th, is follow them. It follows the band of travelers along their path and just kind of hangs back, is looking for the right time to strike. And his whole purpose is to kill Roland. He's part of Roland. He's part of the Crimson King. There's a whole big mix into there with that of who his father actually is. So, I am your father, Luke, kind of stuff. It's kind of a little bit of a mix of both, but his whole purpose is to kill the gunslinger.
Well, his mom is there too, so maybe he's conflicted, even though he's a demon. I don't know, but he is hanging back, sort of like Gollum. Plenty of times.
Yes, very much so. He just kind of darkened the wings in the back there.
Right, like the bad guys, no matter how powerful they're supposed to be, aren't exactly all that opportunistic, aren't all that bright, basically. Which I think is part of the point. I mean, I think sort of the point, just like you mentioned in The Stand, that they did stand. I think the whole point is that if people stand and do the right thing, that you can overcome the odds because the odds aren't as bad as you think they are. I mean, I think that's sort of Stephen King's point generally. But which brings me back to, if Roland just rescued Jake in the first place, not all of this would have happened.
There's a potential. But had he done that, he might have gone on a completely different course that got him off the Dark Tower. That's one thing that is a theme throughout most of these books. Each of these like major characters that he runs into, they're trying to detour him from continuing this quest to the Dark Tower.
Right.
Now, you see it as one way is that he's let existence like blink away. Right. If you stop doing that, you can live a whole life. You'll have a life of your own. Maybe you could have kids. Maybe you could have a love. Every time you go into this Dark Tower thing, death is what you get to experience. Pain and misery and hardship and strife and travel. But if you just gave it up, you could live a normal life. You could be all the way through. You wouldn't even know that sometime after you're gone that the whole world would blink out. What do you care? It's just let it happen, right? It's going to happen anyway. Just let it happen. So he gives up all of these personal relationships and potential growth and love and all these things because this Dark Tower, whatever's going on there, is so important to go and stop it and protect it or whatever it is that he's going to be able to do once he gets there, that he gives up all of these things that life could be for him. And he gets the opportunity over and over and over to just stop and, stop and stay here. Nope, keeps going. Stop and stay here. Nope, keep going. Stop and enjoy this love. Nope, keeps going. Sacrificing his friends, sacrificing his himself, parts of his body, all the way through this thing, just because some wrong needs to be corrected. And he's the only one that can.
He rescued Jake in that tunnel. Instead, that we never would have baby demon that seems to be the linchpin to the Keystones. But anyway, and I think that as we move on and the end of the book sort of validates that for me in some small way, but we should probably continue.
Well, so we're almost there, right?
Yes.
The band comes back. They get into this world called Thunderclap. So they're on the other side. So they've left the Kala, right? It's kind of, if we're going in a line, you've got Lud way back here. You cross the wastelands, you get to the Kala, and then the Kala is kind of back here behind them. And then you go a little further, and there's this old castle of, I think they call it Castle Allure, that used to be where the Crimson King ruled. Like that was his castle, right? And it's on the edge of the darkness that is Thunderclap. Somewhere beyond this darkness is Endworld, and somewhere in the middle of Endworld is the Dark Tower. So they're getting very, very close. And so they're getting into this area called Thunderclap. Now, Thunderclap is like a made-up town. It's kind of like Vegas. You have nothing out there, and then somehow you pipe in some water and you build a city. But if you didn't have the water, the whole thing would just fall apart because you got no water. Thunderclap is this town that's made in the middle of just darkness, complete and total darkness. The only light they have is artificial, whether that's made mechanically by some machine above them or by some magic that's left over. You kind of don't really get a sense on that just yet. But in Thunderclap is where you have the Breakers. You also have these characters that are kind of guards, kind of like a prison. The guards oversee them. These are the low men and the Cantoi, which are like a half animal human hybrid monster thing that are kind of a little bit telepathic in their own sense. So
they're supposed to be absolutely terrifying, and everyone is terrified.
Yeah, completely terrified, except that they steal and put on and make these human masks over themselves. And somehow the human mask like hides all of their bird feature or their rat feature or whatever it is. And they kind of look a little human, except you can see it moving every once in a while, which is kind of a weird component to them. So these are the guards, and the Breakers, you come to find out, are telepaths and psychics and just people that have had some extra ability to them. And they've been collected from different places around the world or around time, and they've all been brought here.
They're the Shinings.
Exactly. They are the people. So Jake has a shine in him. Danny Torrance was a potential breaker that escaped. The girl from Firestarter was another potential breaker. She escaped. Carrie could have been a breaker. These are all people that the world of what's the bad corporation? It just jumped out of the tip of my mind there. But the name of the bad corporation that's doing them, Positronics, I think is something Positronics. Anyway, they are the ones who's kind of like the corporation in front of the bad people trying to do all what they want to get done.
Evil.
So they're bringing all these people into this place called Thunderclap. Thunderclap is where they're putting them all together, and they get to break. They don't necessarily know what it is they're breaking, but they're essentially being told to focus in on a certain feeling, which turns out to be one of the beams of the tower, and just break into it. Just start nicking pieces out of that mentally. Pull it apart, bend it, tweak it, crack it, whatever you can do. And to them, in the world that they came from, they were a freak. And so people kind of looked at them like a freak. And, here, they're like the most important person ever. So they get to actually use their talent. It's a thing where all anybody that has a talent ever wants to do is use that talent, because it feels great to play that instrument so well, to write the way that you write, to speak to people the way that you do, to teach others, whatever your skill is, whatever the thing that you're great at, all you want to do is do that skill. And it'd be nice if somebody noticed and it did somebody some good. So these people finally have a place where they get to use their skill, and they're high-fived for it, they're thanked for it, they're praised for this skill that they have, and then they're given a place to actually use it, even though it's to break all of existence.
Right.
They kind of get the
feeling. If you break one string, they all snap afterwards, because the Dark Tower needs all the strings attached to it to hold things together. So
essentially, at this point, there are 6 beams that go off to 12 points. All right. So Dark Tower in the center, 12 points around, 6 beams, one that goes in either direction off in the thing. The idea here is there's only 2 left. You got to at least have 2 to hold the tower up. If you think of a real tower, like a guy wire tower, if you snap any one of the 3 that's remaining, the only 2 that have left, they could possibly hold it up for a little while, as long as you're pulling opposite directions. But it's ready to teeter. You have to have multiple to keep that thing up. These beams operate in kind of that same principle. As long as you have 2 left, you still have a tower. So the reason you have the Overlook Hotel, the reason you have a place where it comes into Derry, is because some of these beams have already been broken. So the world is thinned out. So places like the Overlook Hotel and the Shining are possible because there's no longer a beam that's keeping the hotel just a regular building. Now there's a break in between worlds. And now you have this bleed over because some of the beams have already been broken.
So the entire Stephen King, New England, United States is possibly just one beam was broken, and now all manner of, non-disposable horrors have been unleashed.
That's it. And there are spaces in between these worlds that are matter and the things that we know. And that's like the book, The Mist, was where we broke into that space in between, and the mist and all these creatures came pouring out. So if the tower goes, then these creatures could potentially be the things that take over afterwards. Because I
didn't even realize The Mist was a Stephen King story.
Yeah, there's quite a few. The Stand, It, Talisman, Insomnia, Hearts in Atlantis, The Mist. These are all things that have Salem's Lot. They all have plays and interconnections to this. So whether they either reinforce some of the ideas that show up, like the beams, whether they introduce characters that show up, like Hearts in Atlantis. You have one of the breakers that's pretty integral. His name is Ted Brodigan. He was main character in Hearts in Atlantis. He shows up. He's now one of the breakers in Thunderclap. Hearts in Atlantis was him trying to escape Thunderclap. He went to Connecticut, and the Lowmen came and got him back. So his little time of escape was Hearts in Atlantis. Now they brought him back. Now he's back here in Thunderclap, and now here comes Roland and the band. Ted has been, because he's psychic, kind of knew they were coming. The lore was that there was a gunslinger going to come out of the west, and he was going to take over to the Dark Tower. But this has been going on for thousands of years, this lore of this gunslinger coming out of the west. Gilead has been gone for thousands of years, and the world that the gunslinger came from is old and gone for thousands of years. But here Roland is still alive, and in his one lifetime, he's now almost here.
So falling asleep on the beach and having crabs bite his fingers off actually is, it was those thousands of years that allowed the reality to turn into legend, lore, prophecy.
Yep. You got to let your story grow, get a beard, and get old on you. Yeah.
That's right.
So he gets into Thunderclap. Now this is where he can actually do some preventing actions to save the tower, because the breakers are what is breaking the tower. If he can stop the breakers from doing that, then the tower is essentially saved.
Right.
So
And these low men, which are terrible, and everyone's afraid of them, and they get everyone. He dispatches them like you said, like before, like in 5 minutes. These terrifying bad guys. Kaboom, goodbye. They're done.
Yep. Because again, they use surprise, and they use they don't see them coming. They don't wait. They're not like running in yelling, "Ah, I'm going to come." That's the thing I laugh at every story that uses that component. Why are you going to tell them you're coming?
Playing Splinter Cell, I'm like sniping them.
Exactly. There's a way you're going to make this happen, and it's not by running up into their face and going, "I'm going to shoot you now." Right?
Even though they're telepathic monsters, they seem to have no ability to communicate with each other, defend themselves, or mount any offense capably. Which again, I think is part of the point of it. That true good is really no match, or for this quasi evil, or these evil. Again, I compared them to stormtroopers earlier, because the stormtroopers, somehow they control the universe, but whenever they're put into action, they seem mightily incompetent.
They miss every single laser beam shot they fire.
Every single time. They've never hit anything, and their armor doesn't protect them against anything. So
nope, there are so many burn spots in the walls throughout the Death Star. It's just got to be insane. The repair bills out there has got to be off the charts.
Yeah, I mean, in all that space, they have no target practice.
Nope. So so they take care of things pretty big time in here. But here's where the band starts to break down, because the lore is also that the gunslinger is solo when he reaches the Dark Tower, but he's got a band of friends right here. So here's where the band starts to break down. So Eddie takes a hit, and major spoilers on these. His band has to go down in some way. So Eddie gets injured in that battle. So now he's kind of down. He's got to stay behind. They got to send him off. They have to make another trip back to Keystone Earth to go see Stephen King again, because he is kind of a manifestation of one of the beams, the way that he wrote it. And if he stops writing the Dark Tower stories, then the beam degrades all by its own. So they have to save the tower from the breakers that are breaking the beams, and they got to save one of the beams from itself, because the writer in Keystone Earth is too afraid to continue writing the story.
And maybe some of the breakers are the ones that are making him afraid. We don't know.
That's a big potential, right? I don't think they called that out, but I like that as an idea. That they were pushing fear into him on that scale, probably throughout his entire life. Yes. So they had to go back to Keystone Earth to try to get him back on track. And in the middle of that, here's where it was kind of a cool way to work this in, more reality woven into the fiction. Stephen King's van incident, where he got struck by somebody out on a walk, he wrote that into this story.
Right.
So now,
or at least Kyle trying to get him out of the way.
So now, because you think about it, he took pretty much a head-on hit with a van going like 40 mile an hour down this side road, near his house, but he survived. You're like, man, who survives getting slammed by a van? And so in the story here,
and most people haven't been to Bangor, Maine. I have, and those roads were small, and I have a feeling they're not much bigger now.
And in the summertime, they're even smaller, because the growth of trees and plants and brush and everything comes in on the sides and takes up a lot of your, you don't have edges. You have a road and a ditch and the forest.
Plus all the vans and the school buses for all the summer camps. They're cluttering it up.
Yep. You get everybody from Massachusetts comes up, and it's vacation land. It's where you come. By the way, I am living in Maine at the time right now, so that's where I'm broadcasting this from.
Are you a townie, or are you from not here? Are you
No, I'm from the West Coast. I moved here in like 2009, so I will never officially be a Maina, according to the locals.
okay,
I've been here for a
you're
long
still
time, but
from elsewhere. So you
yeah,
basically you're from a different universe as well.
that is correct. I went through my own door, and here I am in some of Roland's world, which is kind of neat because you do see a lot of elements of where he pulls from. I drive down the road and I pass a place that's called Dearborn. It's a business. It's Dearborn, like motors or trucking or something like that. And Dearborn was the name of that Roland used in as a pseudonym in Wizard and Glass. You start seeing a lot of these little elements when you live here of where he pulled from. You also get the feeling that Maine is a weird state. There's a lot of weirdness to some of the social that goes on around in things, and you can see where some of the weirdness that he has pulled into his stories kind of soaks up just from being around here. There's
You
a
can
lot of
get there,
wilderness.
but you can't get there from Har.
Yeah. So it's unique there. So they get in and out of that where Jake is the one that sacrifices himself, seeing the van coming, puts himself in between the van and Stephen King to protect the beam. And Jake ends up going down from that one. So now we lose
Now he's
a
dead 3
second
times.
component. Yes. And again, he still wants to think, there are other worlds than these, but one of the things that they tried to imply is that in Keystone Earth, done is done.
Right.
And so if you die there, that's kind of it. But there's a lot of worlds, so you never know. So there's another band that goes down. So now you're down to just Roland and Susanna, because he comes back in. They meet back up. They start heading down the trail, and here's where the bulk of the last book, The Dark Tower itself, is Susanna and Roland wandering through Endworld, trying to get to the Dark Tower. And it slows down quite a bit. The pace of the whole story slows down quite a bit with these two, because they're walking, and there's not a lot of tragedy. It's an empty area. There's not a lot of game to shoot for. The only real antagonist that's left is the Spider Boy, who's following them for quite a while through this. And here's where we lose the last, or not the last, but one of the last bands is Oi, the little dog raccoon friend of Jake's that has been traveling with them this entire time since Wizard and Glass, or since Wastelands, I believe. Sacrifices himself and kills the Spider Boy as he finally takes his chance to attack on the band. And Oi jumps in and ends up getting like impaled or sink on that. So
the Prince of Hades, this demon, gets killed by a dog.
Essentially, yes. He was already really bad off because this thing he's sick. He's like a child. He can't take care of himself. He's ill for a couple of different reasons. Shot his leg off was one. He ate some things he ought not to have eaten, some dead stuff that is starting to really mess with him. He's alone in the world. He's like growing really fast, but essentially he doesn't know squat. He just knows, I need to kill this thing. He can hear his Crimson King dad pulling him along, like mentally, but he's really got no skills, and he's drawn down to where if he was in full form, then he would have been quite a difficult challenge. He would have been a menace, but he is depleted by this time.
Not exactly full Antichrist.
No, he's like handicapped in himself just because he hasn't been cared for at all. So like in Rosemary's Baby, all that like special drink that she had to like drink to make sure the baby stayed strong.
Yep,
the drink was over. There was no more drink.
There was no more drink.
You're on your own.
And Rosemary turned on him.
Yep. And so did this. His mother was trying to kill him as well, and so
No, that's what I meant. And in the movie Rosemary's Baby, Rosemary definitely didn't turn on him. She
Yep.
turned for him.
Yep. So you had the same kind of end there. I don't know how much too much in the spoilers and how much more time we want to spend, but the final
Let's
bit.
Let's get it to the end.
The final bit here is this key character that was introduced in Insomnia, this Patrick Danville. Susanna and Roland find him in the basement of a demon character that is kind of in the same species realm as the clown from It. Instead of feeding off of fear, this thing just feeds off of emotion in general. And so he had enslaved this boy, Patrick Danville, in the basement of this little house that he was living in on the edge of the Dark Towers fields to torture him constantly. It's kind of like a cow. You milk your cow, you have milk. You keep the cow, though, right? Patrick Danville's the cow. He would go down and scare the boy or cause him to laugh too much or, something, and he would just be feeding off of this boy's emotions like a cow. Right. And so the band dispatches with this thing, which almost didn't happen, and they save the boy. They're not even sure what to do with him. His tongue is cut out so that he couldn't speak and cause problems. They also realize that this boy is an artist. You get a hint of that in Insomnia, where the boy had drawn a picture of Roland. The mom even mentions it in Insomnia. Oh, what is this? Oh, that's Roland. He's a gunslinger, mama, right? And you get this kind of little hint in Insomnia. Yeah. And now here we are in the future because, gotta have some other psychic boy. And this kid can draw unbelievable realistic interpretations of whatever it is he's drawing.
The gunslinger needs to reload.
What's that?
The gunslinger needs to reload.
Draw some more bullets. That's right. So Susanna catches on to this because she realizes that she's looking at one of his drawings and he drew all of them. And in the distance, there was this field of elk or bison or something. And she could have sworn that those bison were really far away. But in the drawing, he drew them quite a bit closer. And then when she looked to see, aren't they wait, whoa, crap. She realized the bison are now closer. And she kind of makes the connection. She's like, wait a minute. Did they get closer because you drew them closer? Or because they were way out there? It's not like they just wandered over here, which was, what any sane person would think. So then she says, I don't know if she asked him to or if he drew a picture of her, but she had this really nasty boil, radiation is still kind of active and it's kind of messing her skin up. So she's got this big pimple on her face. And she says, I don't like that picture of me with that boil. That thing's disgusting. Can you get rid of that? And so he takes an eraser and he erases the boil from her face. And the boil disappears from her actual face. And so she realizes, she's like, well, if you could erase things, could you also create things?
We will, Sports Badger. We'll go to the end.
So he draws a door. She goes through the door, and now we've lost another band member. Gets to the end, Patrick becomes the very big component of how to get rid of the Crimson King, who now shows up on the side of the Dark Tower. They make it there.
Well, shouldn't he just draw the Dark Tower so that it's right in front of them?
He didn't have to, but that would have been a nice, easy thing. Here's one of those big weapons that gets used in one really particular way instead of all the imaginative things that we could have used it for. Here's where Harry Potter becomes another connected story in this, because there's these sneech balls that the Crimson King has. He's throwing at them that they're little explosives. Roland keeps shooting them out of the air as they're trying to get to the Dark Tower, but the Crimson King is mounted on the edge of it. And all of a sudden he realizes, hey, Patrick, you could draw this and you can erase and get rid of the Crimson King for me, right? And so he draws this thing, but he couldn't quite get the essence of this immense being that is the Crimson King. So he had to do this little trick where he pricked his finger with some blood in his hand, and he took a petal of the roses that was in the field around him, mixes all of that together, and puts the red of the Crimson King's eyes on the drawing. Then he erases the rest of the Crimson King, leaving only the red of the eyes, and the Crimson King disappears except for these two floating eyes that remain on the side of the Dark Tower, which are now completely helpless.
Do you think that the field of roses, that any one of those roses could have been a Keystone Rose?
The Keystone Rose is still in the Keystone Earth, but all of the roses that surround the Dark Tower are representatives of the many worlds, all the universes, all of the string, other worlds that there are. These are those other worlds.
And he's got control over them, or had control over them.
Had for a little bit, yeah. But he couldn't get in the Dark Tower because the only way to open the Dark Tower, which I had written this down because I'd caught it just from a re-listen. The Dark Tower is also referred to as Can Calyx, which in this world is Hall of Resumption. And that was a little foreshadowing that was dropped into, I think, the 6th book. And
outside of wrestling, there is a referee named Jessica Carr, and she was training to be a wrestler, and her name was Calyx in it.
Ties in.
Yeah, not a connection. So, coincidence.
just pulled it in your head. So the only way to open the Dark Tower is to prove that you are of the line of Eld. And so you have to have the gunslinger's guns.
Cam means castle, and it's like from Gaelic, it's like Carn Cam is Camelot is like the cancel of Lot, basically.
Okay, so I love all those things. I didn't know that one before. So now that there's no guardian of the tower, Roland can go there. Here's where we get to the actual end, where he enters the tower. Patrick goes off into nowhere. He's just like, there's no more Patrick in the world. There's no story that Stephen King has written to try to address where Patrick went or what happened to him. He was just, thanks for taking care of the most ultimate bad guy of ever with your drawing and your eraser.
His purpose is done.
Yeah, it was like the key. It got used, and now it's just kind of a dim thing.
His watch is over.
Yes. You may now walk away. Thank you.
And by the way, I'm speaking I know that's a Game of Thrones reference, but I mean, they spoke I see you very well, Roland. I hear you speak true, Roland. They did speak a little sing-songy.
Yeah. So he gets into the tower, and here's where Stephen King does a pretty cool thing. He says, look, you should stop your story right here. You got to the ending that got you what you wanted. Reading the rest is kind of a spoil, and you really should not do it. But of course, everybody's going to read it to the end. Right. So you continue on. And Roland starts going up the tower and seeing his whole history, birth, all the way up till he gets to the top, where he assumes is going to be the maker of everything. He assumes God is at the top, or, that's the idea. He reaches the door at the top and he opens it up, and he realizes almost instantly what's on the other side of that door, and almost as instantly realizes, I don't want to do this again. But he can't stop it. The door is already swinging open. It's already pulling him through. He steps into it, only to find himself back at the desert at the very beginning of The Gunslinger, where he ends with the same very cool phrase, at the very beginning is the very ending. The man in black walked across the desert, and the gunslinger follows. So Wheel of Claw.
But there was one difference, and I'm pretty. This time, he had the horn of Gilead with him.
Yes.
So I believe that is a hopeful sign that he can at some point break this cycle. He got another tool that he didn't have before.
Yes.
Now, I don't know that this horn is going to be a thing that I don't know that I'm right, that if he chooses Jake instead of his obsession, that will break the cycle or not. But he whatever he did, he got a little bit further, or did it a little bit better than the time he did before, and he got another tool in his toolkit. But that is just my theory. I don't know if that is your theory or anyone else shares it or not.
It's a lot of people's theory, but think of it in an even bigger sense. If he gets another tool, and what is that tool going to help him do? Is it going to help him save the Dark Tower in a different way? Or is it going to help him go off and live a life? Because if he goes off and lives a life, imagine what happens. Dark Tower ends, cycle ends. We need Roland to keep going to save the Dark Tower over and over and over again so that existence can continue to exist. Without Roland on his quest.
Maybe he's the actual thing that's holding the Dark Tower together. Maybe
that's it.
Maybe there doesn't have to be this cycle. Maybe the universes can, all the different worlds can exist, in their own realities and not be so tied together. Maybe this endless cycle, he's the problem. If he just did the right thing, if he just stopped on his obsessive quest, which maybe was misbegotten along the way, and we've gotten clues along the way that it's misbegotten and weird and sort of deceptive, and like I said, if he just saved Jake, that was like his last chance to save it in this cycle. I have no idea what the Horn will do differently, because he's already, blown his chance to get a cavalry in Kaya, whatever. But I do like to think that, one more tool, that they didn't, like, we didn't get the impression that he was missing anything, like they traded something for the Horn, I did. I thought it was something different, but maybe you're right. Maybe it is just a substitute for something else, and it's just a different way of getting to the same place forever. And maybe that's what it is. Maybe the Roland actually is as much a wheel of Ka, and maybe he's the last, what do you call them, breakers? Maybe he's actually the last anti-breaker, and as long as he keeps doing this, it's never going to quite break. And those two eyes, the rest of the body wasn't important. They just the two eyes means that the demiurge still exists, and maybe that's all there is, just a demiurge.
Yeah, because Roland still exists, so you have to have his opposite still exist, because yin has to have the yang. The two sides of those things have to always exist in balance together. If you have the one, the man in black and the Crimson King, you have to have the other, your gunslinger and your Jake and your Eddie and all those. So this is where I like to say that the rewritten gunslinger book, that's actually the 8th book, because now you can restart. He's back in the desert. He's going to start walking through again. Now, the only thing I don't believe that they mentioned is that he has the Horn at the beginning of the rewrite. Stephen King meant the rewrite to be in the place of the beginning, and you start here. Please read this one, because the other one, I made mistakes. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I was just a kid trying to be a really intense writer, and I created this gunslinger thing out of pieces, and I threw it out there. And I want to perfect it. But to me, I would read that afterwards. Now, for some readers, they've said that getting through the original Gunslinger is a little bit of a challenge. It's dry. They don't fall into it the way that some of us had. And so maybe reading the rewritten version is a little easier to stomach. There's maybe a little more color in it. Jake is a little more of a stronger character in there, I guess. Yeah. He's got more of a backbone kind of a thing. He's not quite.
It's still not an easy read. If I hadn't had so many people tell me to read The Dark Tower, I don't know that I would have necessarily finished it. So, and I'm pretty certain that I read the rewrite person, and there definitely was no Horn of Gilead in the first. But listen, I'm sure that people can eternally debate what the ending means, if anything. I'm not even sure Stephen King knows what it means exactly. Probably, or possibly he argues with himself daily as to what it is, and that's okay. I think that's fine, because none of us know the answers to the mystery of the universe, or one of the reasons why there's all these, I'll always say, because there's always been esoteric knowledge and mystery schools and secret societies, is not because there's any hidden truth. It's because everybody's trying to fit into some club that thinks that they have it, whether they do or whether they don't. And L. Ron Hubbard said the easiest way to become a millionaire is create a religion. So Maybe that's
The
what
world
King
of the world of possibility and potential that each person can create in your own mind, trying to guess what it is much bigger than the answer of what one person may say it's supposed to be.
And if any of you out there have any connections to the people who do the Midnight Myth podcast, who have been on this podcast, but then they went off X and they had a second child and they started doing the Midnight Myth podcast again, but they don't check their X. And I've emailed them, and I think they like, but they definitely have a take on this. And one of them the husband does a show called The Wheel of Ka. So if any of you can forward this show to them, and more than welcome to chime in on this and all things King, because I think their insights would be very helpful to me, and then they probably become very good friends with Matt as well. But two of the smartest people that I have cyber met, and anyway, enough said about that. Anyway, Matt, you've already said earlier that you've got nothing to promote and you don't want anyone to find and follow you. It's bad enough that they know that you're in Maine. So for me, you can find me on the X at dose_evil or at IcarusFellMD. You can also find me on Facebook. I think everyone knows my name by now. It's Jeff Lippman. And you'll find me tomorrow night here on the Sports Jedi doing the MLW files with my best friend, Mr. Thomas, erstwhile of MLW Wrestling and always part of the Boomaye Fight Club, the Godfather indeed. You'll find me again Tuesday doing the NXT review show, The Padawan Awakens, slightly after NXT goes off the air, so a little bit after 10 p.m. Eastern. And yes, I'll be back on Wednesday doing another Garden of Thought. I think this week is another policy-driven show. And I don't know. And on Wrestling Soup, do the LFG review with the legend Lufisto. And God knows what else I'm going to end up doing this week. Enjoy SummerSlam Night 2 for all those who celebrate. Otherwise, thank you, Matt. Say hello to your lovely wife-to-be, See the Superior, and have her contact me because she thinks I'm waiting that I'm supposed to contact her, but I'm waiting to hear from her on this Aaron character, whoever he or she might be, to see if we're going to do the Prestige, because Mr. Thomas is actually willing to do an extra podcast, and that never happens, that grumpy, big, beautiful man. God, he's so handsome and big and strong. Oh, I love him so much. He's my best friend, but I'm not his best friend. All right, we've gone long enough, and I think I'm funny right now, but everyone's like, please shut up, so I will do that. I'm going to shut up. Bye.